Hey, what's up, guys? Chung here again. So this time, let's take a look at another LeetCode problem here. Number 340, a longest substring with at most k distance characters. Sorry, k distinct characters. So you're given like a string. Find the length of a longest substring t that contains at most k distinct characters. Okay, so every time when you guys see like a longest substrings, right? A substring with at most, since it looks for a substring, right? It's a it's it's a very strong hint that you need to use a sliding window to solve this problem, right? And basically with the sliding window, we have a left and right pointer. We have a left and a right pointers, and every time when we try uh, and every time when we have like a new right pointers and then we will basically if it's if has more k distinct has more k distinct more distinct characters than k, then we'll try to shrink the left until we reach the this uh, match this condition, then we update our answer, right? So with sliding windows, there are like two basic uh, asks here. First is to find the longest, right? Find the longest, and then the other one is to find the shortest, right? So for shortest, right? So for the longest, as you guys can see, we check if this we check if the we do a while loop, right? In the while loop, we check if this thing is not satisfied. Basically, we loop until we shrink the left. Basically, for the longest one, we shrink left until it matches, until it's satisfied this condition. Then we know, okay, so that's the first left that will be satisfying this condition. That's why we're how we get the longest substring, right? And if we are trying, if it asks you to get the shortest, right? So for the shortest, how can we get the shortest? So for the shortest, same thing, right? We also try to shrink the left, right? Until we shrink the left until it doesn't like match this condition. But the difference is that okay, sorry. So for the shortest, we shrink the left while it's still satisfying, still meet this condition. We shrink the file until we stop until it doesn't, right? And then in the while loop, we update our answer. That's how we get the shortest, right? Basically, so in this case, we're gonna have the longest one. So right, so with the longest one, we we shrink first, right? And then we update our answer, right? And for this, and also for this problem, specific problem, in order to get the range, the case distinct characters, we're gonna use a counter, basically hash tables, and where for each time when we see a new right pointer moves to a new place, we update the counter, and then we check basically the length of the counter will be our current distinct characters, right? And then every time, and then we're trying to shrink the left pointers, and every time when we shrink the remove one character out of the sliding windows, we update the counters, right? If the counter count is 0, we remove it, right? Until the length of the counter uh, is within this k, right? And then we update our answer. For example, this one here, right? EC, EC, E, B, A, right? So at the beginning, the left and right, they're both pointing to here. Okay. And then when the right pointer uh, when the right pointer pointing to this E here, we have a counter here, right? So the counter, so the E is 1, right? And then when it comes to go right pointer move to C, then we see a C is also 1, right? And the case is 2, right? So at this moment, the length of the counter is still not exceeding the K, so it's still okay, right? And then it moves to here, and then it moves to here, right? When it moves to the E here, we update the counter. So now the 1 becomes to 2, right? And the length of counter is still 2, which means still okay, right? So and then now it comes to B here, right? So when it comes to B, we have B1, right? And then now the length of the counter becomes to 3, which means the current string is not a valid substring, right? Then we try to shrink uh, the left pointer, and now we're moving this left pointer E out of the sliding window, right? And then we decrease this from 2 to 1, right? And we see, okay, so it's still 3, which means it's still not a valid. So we have to keep shrinking. So now left. Okay, so not left here. And then we have to move left to here. Then we'll try to remove C here. We okay, remove C, and then okay, this 1 becomes 0, right? Every time when the count is becomes 0, we remove it from the counter. And then we see, okay, so by removing C, we have another valid substring, right? And then every time when we have a valid substring, we basically we update our answer, right? That's how we get the longest, right? Basically, we every time the moment we're seeing like a valid one, we are we update. That's how we get the longest. So if for the, like again, so if you want a short uh yeah, so we'll talk about the shortest later. So for the shortest, so while we're shrinking, we treat it as the as a valid candidate, and then while shrinking we update. But the difference here is like uh we only update our answer after the shrinking, right? So for the shortest, we update our answer while shrinking. Okay, so then we're moving again here until we finish go through all the elements in this substring, right? And then in the end, we simply return the answer. Okay, so let's try to okay, so let's try to code this thing. So basically, we're gonna have a counter first, right? The collections, sorry, default dictionary, right? I'm gonna have an integer here, and then I'm gonna have like left pointer, right, equals to 0, and then an answer equals to 0 as well, because we're getting the longest, which is the biggest. That's why we can safely use a 0 as a starting point, right? And then uh, character, right, in enumerate as, right? So this sliding window is it's we don't need to get the sum of the substring or subarray, right? For the arrays we usually need to get a sum, but in this case it's not about the sum, it's about the count of each character, right? And so like I said, every time, right, we update the count for the current character, right? And while while length of the counter is greater than k, right? And then we shrink the left counter, left pointer, and before shrinking it, we'll update, right? We'll update our counters. Basically, this is gonna be the s dot left, right, and -1. If it's becomes 0, right, we simply delete it. Okay, and so after shrinking, we can now simply safely update our answer, because right after we see a valid answer, and then we know that's the longest substring we can get at the moment with the right index as the ending string, right? So it's gonna be the max of the answer plus uh, right minus left plus 1. Mm, yes, the reason we do a plus 1 here is because now the left has already uh, moved one more to the right, right? After this check, right? Because at this moment, the left one is the basically the left from left to right is our valid string, and to get the length, we need to do a plus 1, okay? And then in the end, we simply return the answer here, right? So I think this should just work if I didn't do anything wrong. Cool. So all right. So yeah. So basically, a classic sliding window plus the counters to verify when is the time, what's the conditions to shrink or to stop shrinking the left, to shrink the stop shrinking the slide window. And then since we're doing the longest or the biggest, that's why we shrink first, and then we update the answer. Uh, cool guys, I think that's it for this problem. Thank you so much for watching the videos, and stay tuned. See you guys soon. Bye bye.